of the kitchen, actually washing some plates, and something actually very, very interesting happened to me. Really, while I was watching the plate, I heard the voice of two little girls. I mean, 2 and 3, talking while I was watching. Really, believe me, I was listening to them, trying to hear what they were saying while I washed my plate. But it was so amazing that I couldn't hear what they were saying. It's like they were just blabbing. So I decided to put up this video because it's quite interesting to me that they could be talking for over 10 minutes and I can't hear what they were saying. Now, I just think I might have been in a situation like this as an adult, talking to people, communicating to people, and I can't actually hear what they are saying. Now, have you find you, as you listen to me, have you find yourself in that situation whereby you have that job interview and that person who is interviewing you cannot actually relate with you? Really, I don't know. Have you talked to your woman telling her to change something and she's not willing to change? Okay, let's take it that idea of yours. Have you find it to the position that you meet an investor and you're trying to tell him or he or she rather, what you're about to do, and the person cannot actually understand you? Really, I think the only problem about this is that there is a communication gap. Today, let's talk about how we can communicate in businesses and in our relationship. It is very, very key. One of them, which will start off King James in Scotland in the 14th century, whereby the king actually take a dumb woman and decided to set them aside where people don't stay. So he decided, the king did something very, very funny. He picked 2 little children and kept them with the woman, tried to give them all the basic necessity of life they need to live. After a couple of years, when these little children was time for them to talk, remember the woman that was actually brought them up was a dumb. These little children, the first thing they said was very good Hebrew. So the king decided that Hebrew is the first language. Now that's the first story. Now, second story actually happened 2015 when I personally decided to visit the Federal College of Education in Oyo State. I was there and I decided to visit a friend who is actually visually impaired. While I was there, I saw her with a friend who is hearing impaired, that is deaf and a blind. Now, both of them were communicating and I asked myself, how possible will a deaf communicate with a blind? After all, the blind could talk, the deaf could not hear. The deaf could sign with his or her hand, but the blind could not see. So what actually happened was that the blind would type something on her phone. Remember, the blind could have a phone that is a screen reader apps accessible. Then he decided to get the phone to someone who is blind. The blind could see with his or her eyes, and he would also delete it and type that for the blind person to read. Now, I was not asking myself, before the adventure of mobile screen apps, what would have happened between the blind and the deaf? However, let's relate the 2 stories, that of the king and the blind and the deaf. Now you realize that one thing is the key. Both of them actually decided to be patient in order to actually achieve the result or the aim of what they want for themselves. Now, patience is not just key for both of them. That child that you're actually correcting, have you been able to take your time to study the reason why that person is not actually changing? Now, in your office or in the place of work, your friends, the people you fought with last year, or you pressed a bond of friendship with them, try to ask yourself, what actually validates their thoughts, their ideas, and the kind of things they do? You realize that the only thing is that you have not been patient enough for you to actually study what actually led them to do that. So, the first thing you need to know is patience is very, very key if you want to understand each other. Number 2, behavior is a language. Behavior is a language. Now, I remember the definition by Noam Chomsky when he said that he who understands language has internalized the system of rules that actually relate to sounds and meaning for in a particular way. Now, let's take it forward. When we talk about behaviors as a language, you realize that today, why is it that you will correct your woman and she would not change? The reason is this, because the legitimacy of your correction, will be eroded if you cannot speak the behavior of someone to the person. Now, when I say behavior is a language, let's take it from the leadership angle. If you're in an organization, you tell your staff to actually do something, and they are not willing to do that. But now, the reason they are not actually decided, or they have not decided to take that changes, is not for any reason. It's because the language they actually understand about leadership is you as a boss start and they will follow you. That's just the behavior they only want to get. Now, also, in that school, as a teacher, you realize that you correct a child that is an average student, make mockery of that child, and you do that consistently. That child will not change. because it has become part and parcel of that child. So why is it that your behavior and that making mockery of that child is not changing the child? Because that is not the language or the behavior that can actually change the child. So when we talk about behavior, behavior is about response. Communication or language is about feedback. So let's go to the third one. What kind of feedback do you get? What kind of feedback do you get? In business communication, we have a cycle of change from the encoder, because I'm talking right now, the coder, you are listening, and there is a medium for which you are listening to me through the YouTube or wherever you're watching me right now. Now, the essence of you getting that communication is feedback. Now, what is the feedback? It's that you drop a comment, you share, that's on YouTube. If it is a letter, it's that the person responds to your mail, that is if it is email. Now, you as a person, what kind of feedback do you get in your organization? Or what kind of feedback do you get when you talk to someone or the person is not actually listening to you? The reason why people don't give you positive feedback is as a result of you not communicating with the right words or with the right language with them. Now, even why is it that you bring up a product and you decide to sell to people and people are not actually giving you the response? It's not far-fetched. It's because you are not connecting with them. And if you fail not to connect with them, you cannot get the best feedback. So how do you connect with them or get the best? Now, one, is that you speak their language to them? Number two, is that you understand the nature of the person? I can just imagine if you are working in a 5-star or a 7-star hotel as a reception or as an attendant and you cannot actually speak more than one language. Guess it right. One only problem that actually brings about gaps within people is when we don't know what actually triggered the person or what is that language in which the person could understand. Now, let's take it forward. Response or react. Another problem with communication, that is it. Most times today, most of us, we only react to issues. Reaction is negative. Response is positive. Let's take it forward. Now, there is a gap between listening and hearing, and I think we need to clear that. There is a gap between listening and hearing. Now, what's the gap between them? Now, hearing is passive. Hearing is passive and it is not deliberate, it's an unconscious thing. Listening is active and a deliberate action in which you actually you take through. Now, hearing is superficial and listening is profound. Now, the reason I actually mentioned the word hearing and listening is very key. If you are doing anything and you want to get the best of communication, you must learn to listen to people. I need to let you know this. Listening can resolve. Listening can dissolve. If you fail not to listen to your partner, believe me, you are breaking the bond already. If you listen to people, then you can resolve whatever the person is trying to say. Maybe the person is laying complaint or the otherwise. So one thing you need to do right now as I speak to you, as you listen to me now, is how are you listening? There are little things you need to do when you talk about listening. Number one, when you listen to people, never be empathetic about emotional issues. And never be sympathetic about emotional issues. Rather, be empathetic. I need to take that again. Never be sympathetic about emotional issues. Rather, be empathetic. Number two, don't ever jump into conclusion. Let someone who is speaking conclude his word before you say anything. Oftentimes, one of the problems we have is when someone is talking, we just preempt and conclude that we know the meaning of what the person is saying. No, please stop that. Number three, do not judge anyone on the basis of what he's saying, subjectively. And one thing you must learn when you talk about that is that you must be able to comprehend, to tell the person that you are not the only one in this challenge. Now, the last but not the least, whenever we talk about listening, is that please and please, whenever you listen to someone, please let the person conclude his word before you jump in saying things. Now, I'm going to come back and tell you two other things you need to do when you want to talk about learning how to communicate. I'll be back.